Absolutely, that is crucial here. We know there has been a significant spike in the measure of radiation at the gate of the plant, that's inside the plant. Now, radiation is measured in sieverts. Yesterday we were talking about microsieverts and it reached a height there of about 3,000. Well, now we're talking about millisieverts. That's a microsievert times 1,000. And they've measured it at 400 millisieverts. Now, that's at a rate, a level that can do damage to the human body. Now, the critical thing here is what sort of radiation we're talking about and how quickly that, in fact, breaks down. Now, there are two types of radiation. One, or radioactive material, one that is created inside the reactor itself. That's uranium and its byproducts. Then there is others that are released through steam. Now, these are called noble gases. This is commonly released in the venting process when steam is released from the reactor to relieve some of the pressure and protect the containment vessel of the reactor. Now, when this goes into the air, these materials have much less of a shelf life, so they deteriorate very, very quickly. It may measure very highly at the gate of the plant, but then it drops away as it comes into contact with the atmosphere and the further it spreads. Now, normally, you talk about a 10-mile radius. They use this a lot in the United States and other countries where they operate these sort of plants. Once you get beyond that, we're talking about the secondary type of radiation, these noble gases. They dissipate to the point where they are negligible. What we don't know here is what is made up in this radiation, what exactly we're talking about. We know there was an explosion at the number 2 reactor. Now, that seems to be mirroring some earlier explosions at numbers 1 and 3. We're talking about a hydrogen explosion, but in the first two cases, it destroyed the structure, the outside wall of the complex. Now there's a suggestion that what may be damaged here is the suppression chamber, and that is actually attached to the protective coating, the seal around the fuel rods themselves. Now, in that case, then some of the more nasty elements, some of the more nasty radioactive material may be able to escape into the atmosphere. That's what they're having to look at now to see if those radiation levels come down and what exactly is inside those radiation levels, but certainly registering much higher, and that exclusion zone of 20 kilometres remains in place. The Prime Minister, Nayab Khan, is now saying for everyone within a 30-kilometre radius to stay indoors as well as a precaution, Manisha.
Indeed, and that's quite worrying, isn't it? Because you would expect that the Prime Minister wouldn't want to instigate fear amongst the public for any reason right now. They're dealing with enough. So to go public and to extend this zone, that's pretty serious business, surely.
Serious, I wouldn't say worrying. You would have to think it's reasonable and responsible until they find out exactly what is in these radioactive material, what has caused this spike in the radiation levels. As I say, if it is the secondary type of radiation commonly known as these noble gases, which is released with the venting process for steam, that will break down very, very quickly, and within a 10-mile radius, a 20-kilometre radius or something, it will be negligible. If it's made up of the more nastier elements, if we have a breach of the containment vessel as a result of this explosion, there could be elements of uranium or other byproducts which could be in that mixture, and that's what they're not quite sure about. So obviously they have to take all precautions. You know, throughout this process, they've been assuming the worst, and that is assuming a meltdown or a partial meltdown in the reactors, but planning for the best. And part of that planning comes in the construction of these reactors. You know, the reactors don't sit there alone. They're encased in a building, and then there are 3 different levels of containment, and there is also a core protector there, a cement block on the floor to stop any of those materials seeping through if the containment is breached. So what's really critical here is that if all else fails and there is indeed a full meltdown, can that be contained within the structure? Now, that's what happened in 3 Mile Island in the United States, where there was that partial meltdown, but it was contained within the structure. That's what they're banking on here. That the structure holds, the safeguards hold, the containment vessels hold, and the more nasty stuff doesn't escape into the atmosphere.